Hey, I'm J.R. Lay. Welcome back to another episode of the Level Up Business Podcast. In this episode, we're going to explore the connection between strategy, energy, and momentum to help you grow your business as a B2B entrepreneur. But first, I'd like to invite you to get a complimentary copy of my best-selling book, Banking Unchanged. It is the leader's guide to achieving exponential growth in the age of AI. Text me right now, 832-240-1922, and I'll gift you a copy so that you can level up your mind, marketing, and sales so that you can level up your business and your life without sacrificing your well-being. Joining me for today's conversation is my friend Jordan Bonifas. He is the founder of Bonifas Coaching, where he helps entrepreneurs and their teams focus the chaotic energy of transformative change so that together they can drive execution with velocity. Welcome to the show, Jordan. It is good to share time with you today, buddy.
Honored to be on here, man. I'm excited for this conversation.
You know, and just for context for everyone watching and listening, this is the second time that we have hit the record button on this, and there's a reason. And I liked how you showed up. You said, maybe there's something else that we can uncover together. And before we get too far ahead of ourselves, talking about force versus flow, or what you're framing now as holy flow, what is going well for you? What's positive in your life right now, personally and or professionally?
Personally and professionally are my relationships and connections with God, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, first and foremost, with my wife, with my 3 kids. That's the foundation. And when that's the foundation, there's just ripple effects. The people I'm meeting in the community. I've been in Fort Collins, Colorado for just over a year, and I'm just starting to meet some really cool, inspiring, high character, high impact people. So that's what I'm most excited about, is just having conversations like this one and meeting more and more people who want to actually serve and have an impact with what they're doing.
When you talk about this idea of relationships and foundation, I'll be the first one to admit that I was the foolish man who built my house on sand. And when the waves and the wind and the water of life came, that house crumpled and it fell. And you're right, having that strong foundation with relationships, with God, with spirit, with our family, it does start there. Why is it that sometimes entrepreneurs, we get it all out of order? We build the foundation on the wrong thing, and as a result, then we create pain and chaos around us.
I think part of it is our greatest asset can also be our greatest weakness. We have big vision. We get excited and we want to execute. We just want to go. But we need to take a longer term perspective. And I think that perspective is, how can I use this business that I'm growing, not just to make money and win, but also grow my endurance of character, patience, because that's what it's really about at the end of the day. And that sets the foundation. If I can use this business as a catalyst to strengthen my character, at the end of the day, that's what's going to give us fulfillment when we're taking our final breaths.
Oh, taking our final breath. You just took us far ahead into the future, or perhaps maybe not so far ahead into the future. One of our tenets here, our values, is memento mori, which is the Latin phrase for remember your death. And many can view that as a morbid philosophy. But I do believe that if we don't pause and ponder on our death from time to time, we will reach that last breath, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 80 years from now, we will reach that last breath, and we have to look back and reflect on, what kind of life did I lead? What kind of life did I live? And was I doing the right thing along the way? How do you help entrepreneurs and their teams reconcile some of these what could be perceived as uncomfortable topics on the surface level, but once you dig a little bit deeper, you start getting into the riches of life.
Yeah, so I have something I developed called flow-based strategy, and I'll use the analogy of a river. I think the metaphor serves the purpose of this conversation. But I look at everything through the lens of a river. It's been one of my greatest teachers. It gave me a PhD in life and business. So I look at business in life as it's natural. The river is going to flow from the mountaintop down to the ocean. You don't have to make the river do that. So first, we need to look at life, business, and leadership as something that's natural. It's something that can come easy to us if we let it. But what happens is if we look at leadership as the headwaters of the river, where it starts at the mountaintop, it gets blocked with the rocks of insecurity, with self-doubt, with past failures. And when we have those rocks at the headwaters, it builds a dam, and that's not natural. And it makes everything trying to flow around the dam unnatural. So that's the first thing. That's the way I describe how I work with teams and leaders is let's take a look at what's blocking our natural flow of energy. So the first step is awareness. I have to have awareness of where I haven't mastered my past, because anything that we haven't accepted from the past will be consciously or unconsciously projected into the future. We have to look at, are we taking dominion over our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, or are they taking dominion over us? Because if we're not taking dominion over them, we're always going to react instead of respond. So that's the second part to inner mastery, is being able to respond to life instead of react, and being able to take personal responsibility to that. So that's the first part. We have to take a look at what's blocking your energy. Where is the dam located?
When you think about some of the dams that you have helped leaders work through and remove those rocks, you've done this for me, and I'm so grateful for the time that we have shared to visit those experiences, those painful experiences of the past that I was projecting them unconsciously out into the future. But I think what helped me really visualize a painful experience going all the way back to 2012 was we just looked at it objectively. We didn't judge it. You asked me some very good questions. And then I think the most freeing part of it all was when you said, okay, we've removed that rock from the dam. The water is flowing again. The river is flowing again. We didn't throw the rock away. It's just now back in the river and the water's flowing around it. Why is it an important distinction to say that we remove these rocks and we don't get rid of them? We just remove them so that the waters keep flowing once again instead of being blocked.
Yeah, so rocks are natural. If you're rafting down the Grand Canyon, there's going to be rocks. It's part of the river. It's natural. It's part of God's plan. The problem is we see these rocks and we identify with them, or we judge them, and that just keeps adding to the pile of rocks. So then everything feels like overwhelm. It feels overwhelmed to take a leap into the new business, level up business, right? That was maybe some of your problem that you were unconsciously projecting. I have to wait till the right time. I have to wait. And everything feels like overwhelm because the dam's getting higher and higher and higher, and that water wants to flow, but we keep judging the past. So what really transforms it is when we accept, yes, there is a rock, but I don't have to let that rock dictate where I'm going to flow in the river, because water naturally knows how to find itself around rocks. It's natural. But when we keep stacking those rocks, that's when the fear, the overwhelm, the self-doubt, the hesitation take over. So meeting it with acceptance like we did with you. All we did was saying, and you don't even have to say the past was okay, but you're not judging it anymore because it already happened. So we give the past the space to process through. In your case, it was through your body. We gave that sensation all the space it needed, and that's all it was looking for. And once you meet it with acceptance, that dam breaks and the water flows, and that opens you up to more possibilities, new insights, more energy, which I know you were just describing before the podcast how much energy you have with this new endeavor of Level Up Business.
Well, I want to talk about this perspective of, we'll call it energy. And one of the things that I wrote about in my book, Banking on Change, was emotion is energy in motion. And you have a gift. I wouldn't even say a skill. You have a gift to help other leaders, like you did with me, shift or move energy. What's the connection here between moving energy, shifting energy, and how that now connects back to business strategy? Because I think about over the years, all of the strategy work that I have done, but leaders will have a plan. They'll have a path forward to get beyond a present state, to get to what they do perceive, and we have agreement on, a bigger future ahead. But there are these blockers, there are these boulders, there are these rocks that they just are not able to move. And until those rocks are moved, then it's like the ancient wisdom, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. It's like you could have the best strategy in the world, but until you shift energy, until you move energy, you're not going to get any momentum on that strategy. What's the connection, the correlation here?
It's if you picture the headwaters and there's a dam, we try to put that strategy behind the dam. And then we either tell our team members, hey, go execute. And they're like, how? The water's not flowing. Nothing's happening. So that's the first thing. Work through the dam first so the strategy can flow. And the second part is when it comes down to it, strategy is all about choices. You have to make a choice. Where are you going to play? Are you going to serve, in your case, banks, or are you going to serve entrepreneurs? That was a choice. But it's really hard to make a choice when there's all that fear you're projecting, the past failures. You want to play safe, using your language, the cave of complacency. We stay in the cave of complacency, and then we just don't play at all. And using the water analogy, it's like we're trapped in a whirlpool, and that can feel like we're moving, right? But we're not going anywhere. And that's a choice too. It's a choice to stay in the cave of complacency. So to answer the question, you have to work through the dam first and then work strategy so it can flow down river to your team members. And another thing, the teams are all the tributaries joining the river. They all have their own blocks too. They all have their own dams. So it's important to work with the dams of each of the team members too, so we're all flowing in one direction. So that's what I see most leaders get wrong, is it's just straight to strategy. And sometimes it works a little bit, but it takes a lot of energy. You're trying to force the water through the dam instead of letting it flow naturally.
You mentioned before your time with and around the river has given you a PhD in both life as well as business, as we're talking about here today. How has that experience, in your past as a Class 5 raft guide, helped to shape your philosophy on this perspective around flow? Like, what was the most challenging time and experiences that you had literally guiding people down Class 5 rapids? And for those who are watching or those who are listening and they're not aware of what a Class 5 rapid is, personally, I've never had to experience that. So I don't know what that feels like to go down that type of a rapid. But what's a story that you help people guide or help guide people through on the river back in a previous period of your life?
It's so simple, but it took so long for me to learn is the first is focus on the river where the water's flowing and not the rocks that you're trying to get around, because that's the
Why?
essence. Because what you focus on expands. So if you're focused on the big rock that's going to flip your boat, you're focusing your energy there, and you're much more likely to hit it. But if you focus on the narrow opening between the rocks, that's most likely where your boat is going to go. So for me, that was the biggest shift I had from my first couple of years of guiding, where I was gripping the paddle tight, like trying to use my own force to get down the river. And, a lot of the times we would get down safely, almost 100% of the time, but it was so tiring. It was like so taxing on the body and shouting out commands to the crew. When you start letting the river do the work, one, you trust the flow. The river is going to get you to where you need to go. And you stop obsessing over all the things that you don't want to hit. And quite literally, you go with the flow. And it's so much easier. You expand such less energy. You can focus on the people in your raft and actually give them an experience of a lifetime. That would be like the people you're leading in business. You actually have the time to focus on them. And it's just so much more fun at the end of the day when you focus on the flow and not the rocks of scarcity and unworthiness, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, no, I want to pause on this point because I think this is a fantastic analogy and example that we can all reflect on for just a bit in our own personal lives as entrepreneurs. You mentioned what you focus on expands. And instead of focusing on the big rock, the thing that's right there, it's very hard to not see that big rock that could flip your boat, but instead to focus on the narrow opening. When you think about the work that you do with entrepreneurs and their teams, what are the big rocks that many entrepreneurs are focusing on that, in fact, could flip their boat for themselves and with their teams in it? What are those rocks that we need to be aware of?
I think one is just risk aversion, our natural tendency just to inflate risk. So I think that's the biggest rock is like, hey, how much are we actually inflating this little rock and making it this gigantic boulder? And that really prevents leaders from making bold choices that is actually at the heart of good strategy. So that's the first thing is like, hey, how much are we actually inflating this risk? Like maybe this isn't a class 5 right now. Maybe this is just a class 2 and we're making it into a class 5, and we can chill out a little bit. So some of that is just a perspective change, a paradigm shift, and actually like, hey, how much are we actually just inflating this risk? I think another thing is past failures that haven't been worked through. So we think because something happened in the past, it's going to happen again in the future, consciously or unconsciously. So I think working through anything they're still holding on to the past that is still like energy in their body, it's still affecting them. And the last is anything, back to the energy, anything that triggers them. This is kind of an overused phrase in the coaching world, but it's true. The triggers are the gateway to our freedom. So anything that really brings energy in the body, maybe it makes us angry or frustrated, taking a look at those things and transforming them, because that's usually when the dam is going to be blocked and we're going to be able to flow. So those are 3 boulders that I usually work through with my clients before we work on good strategy.
That past failure right there was something that you personally helped me with. And I felt it in my body and I wasn't even aware of it. Like coming back to your point of awareness and then responding to that. I mean, this was 2012. My wife, and you and I have talked about this, but she came to me. She said, it's the business or the family. We had just had our second child, and I was not in a good place. I was struggling with addictions. I was a liar. I was lying to her. I was lying to myself. I was lying to others around me. And it's just, you get into this cycle, and it's really a survival paradigm. When you think about shame and fear and guilt and anger, and you just keep cycling. It's like the whirlpool you were mentioning before. And even once that experience had passed and what I thought we had moved beyond, in fact, I had it. I was like, because I had achieved a level of business success and revenue and financial prosperity. But I associated with that business success and that prosperity with pain that I had caused myself, pain that I had caused my wife, pain that I had caused my two young kids. And even though we had worked through that pain, that I had never fully released that. And that became a fear, like, oh my gosh, if I reach another level of financial success and prosperity, that pain will then appear once again. And so working through the pains of the past before working even with strategy, that's a very different way about thinking about business growth, about leveling up business. We are our biggest, we can be our biggest critic. For someone who is watching or listening right now, what advice would you give them that if they are focusing on the rocks in the river around them, and perhaps even building up a dam consciously or unconsciously, what advice would you give them to help master the inner critic that could be holding them back?
Yeah, the first would be being aware that there are rocks. So that's, and part of that is just slowing down, being in silence. We can't be of service if we don't start with silence. So we can have some awareness of, okay, what really is the problem here? So I would take a look there, like being aware of the rocks. And once you're aware, you can take a look at, is there guilt and shame attached to this? And using your example, like, it's not like guilt is bad. If there's relationship work that needs done, that's a good thing. But you did that relationship work to mend that in 2012. And then you keep judging it. And that's the cycle of shame and guilt that keeps us in the whirlpool. So that's what I mean by acceptance. We don't just say, oh, I shouldn't feel guilty about this. If there needs to be a hard conversation or forgiveness, either to yourself or to your significant other or a business partner or somebody who wronged you, guilt is good, right? But if we're still guilty from something that we repented over, that's when we need to quit judging the rock and just accept that, you know what, I have this rock in the river, and that's okay. It's part of the river, but I can still flow around it. So that would be my first piece of advice, is offer yourself, I call it compassionate self-forgiveness. This is a process I use where we forgive ourselves for anything we're judging, any energy we're holding on to, any resentment, bitterness, judgment. And then once we do it, you can actually feel it in your body. Your body opens up, and then you can take action. It's awareness, acceptance, action, in that order every time.
The guilt shame cycle, I want to loop back around on that. Something that Dr. David Hawkins has in his map of consciousness. One of the things that I've learned over the years is, and I think it's so easy for entrepreneurs to get stuck in that whirlpool. We have a past, what we perceive as a failure, and then we attach that, and there's a bodily attachment to that as well. And even though you're not actively living that experience, your mind is so powerful that you can have the same emotions, which have the same physical response. One of the things I've learned, though, with the guilt shame is, guilt is I am sorry for what I did. Shame is I am sorry for who I am. And so there's this personal belief. And I think about the work that we're doing with Level Up Business to help other entrepreneurs elevate their brand, expand their influence. the self-limiting beliefs that I'm already hearing. Oh, why should I launch another podcast? Who cares about what I have to say? Or who would even read my book? I'm not that smart. Or I don't want to be an influencer. These are beliefs that I believe are holding other B2B entrepreneurs back from helping, truly helping. You talked about the need for silence before service. How are you applying this in your own life as we start to wrap up? This silence before service. I think that's so important because the world has become even more noisy and chaotic and loud, and everyone is fighting for our attention. And for those who are watching and listening, I am so grateful. I just want to express my gratitude for sharing time with Jordan and myself, because you are gifting us with the most precious gift, which is your time. It is your attention.
Thank you, brother. There's a quote by Mother Teresa. The fruit of silence is prayer. The fruit of prayer is faith. The fruit of faith is love. The fruit of love is service. The fruit of service is peace. So if you reverse engineer all that, what does it start with? It starts with silence. So we in the coaching world and in the business world, we always say, sell with service, sell with service, be of service, be of service. But what does that mean? You can't have service without love, to will the good of the other. You can't have service without love. You can't have love without faith. And that's a big thing in entrepreneurship. You have to have some damn faith, because you're going to fail, right? But you have to have some faith that it's going to work out for the highest good. But it all starts with silence. And in this world where we're so darn distracted, there's so much information and there's so much knowledge. And you've talked about this for the last couple of years. Our biggest resource going forward is going to be our humanity, our ability to sit in silence. For me, it's communing with God, having a conversation, not just petitioning, but listening, having the faith and the love to serve so I can have peace. That's going to be the competitive advantage in the future. And I know you spoke about this. I know you've talked about this. There's so much information and there's not enough insight. And that insight starts with silence.
I feel like we need to take a moment of silence and just like process that, because thinking about that logical path from silence to peace and what happens in between that, and all of the noise and the distractions, not just from the outside world, but also from the inner world of our own inner critic, our own fear, our own unbelief, uncertainty, our own doubt. Sitting in silence with that and reconnecting with God, reconnecting with Source, if you will. There's a lot of ways we can look at this. That's where the wisdom and that's where the insight comes from. I think about my wife, Delina, which I know you've had some good conversations with her when we were able to hang out in person. She had shared something with me last night that was so profound. I'm still reflecting on it myself, and we'll probably do some writing around it just to unpack that even further. But I said, where do you get this wisdom from? And her comment time and time again is, she goes, I just sit in silence a lot and I just listen to God. And I'm like, and I'm one, and I think a lot of it is just my MO, high driving, high functioning, little ADD thrown in there. But I'm working more and more to master and quiet the monkey mind that has a lot of chatter, a lot of noise, to just reconnect and find that silence once again, because that is the ultimate connection that is the true intelligence that will provide that path forward through the river, working with the river, and not fighting the river. As we wrap up, for those watching and listening, what would you recommend for them to shift their energy to move from force back into flow once again? What would be the one thing that you would recommend they do next?
The one thing I would recommend, well, we just talked about silence. I would sit in silence, even if it's for 2 minutes, and just be aware of where you're holding tension in your body. It's amazing. You know, you talked about the monkey mind, and the monkey mind projects so much fear, but something has to hold that fear. That's what the body does. The body is like a table. It holds the fear. So we're always holding all kinds of things. And then you can just inquire about it, or, you know, find a mentor, find a coach, find a good friend, or somebody in your church, or whatever it is. Find somebody to confide in. You know, we need community. We need people around us. So find good people who will listen and tell them about your struggles. Tell them about the tension you're holding on to.
You talk about this idea of connection. Connection leads to community. Community provides clarity and allows us to continue to commit to move forward with courage, and as a result, increase our confidence. If there is someone who needs to make a connection with you, what is the best way for them to reach out and say hello?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Jordan Bonifas on LinkedIn. You can send me a message. I have a website, jordanbonifas.com. You can connect with me on there. I write weekly, bi-weekly articles on Substack, substack.jordanbonifas.com. And I will connect with anybody. I'll have a conversation with anyone. And one of my gifts is I can have a conversation, and with 5 minutes, I can usually see where in your body you're holding tension. So reach out, let's connect, or like I said, connect with somebody in your community. The more we can get together and talk about some of these things, the more impact and of service we can have, which is going to be everything going into the future.
Connect with Jordan. Have that conversation. 5 minutes. I highly recommend it. Jordan has played such an important role. He has been my helpful guide to move from force into flow, to launch Level Up Business. I'm so grateful, Jordan, for your gifts and your perspective, your wisdom, and that's how we're all going to level up and get even better together. Thank you so much, dude.
Thank you, my brother. Let the good river flow. And I love you, man. I'm excited to stay connected with you and see what Level Up Business does for the entrepreneurial world in 2025. Let's go.
Let's go. That's for sure. I love you too, dude. And if you want to continue to learn, connect with Jordan. I also invite you to get a copy of Banking on Change. It's my gift to you so that you can guide yourself and your team through the age of AI and unlock exponential growth together. Text me 832-240-1922, and I'll reply right back to you with your gift.